Hey guys, this is Birdman from Doin Bikes, and this is an informational come promotional video to give you a better understanding of what's involved with mapping a bike, what we do and why, and you'll also get an idea of why we favour this method of mapping over other versions. And finally, we'll also be offering a smaller version video clip like this one that you can purchase for your own bike being mapped at Doin Bikes. And this will give you an idea of what you can expect from that video if you choose that option. And it'll be a great little 5 to 10 minute clip of what we did with your bike that you can sit around and have a few beers with and watch with your mates. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just get the bike up to temperature, and ideally we want to keep the bike at around between 80 and 90 degrees, which is where your bike's going to run on the road. And it's going to give us a consistent measure of what we're doing before and after as well, so that the bike's within the same parameters for measuring the gains we're going to get. So this is what we're doing just now, is just getting the bike up to an RPM. You can see on the temperature gauge there, if you can see it, it's around 50 to 60 degrees currently. I'm just going to really put the brake on and release it on the dyno just to keep it around that rev range and warm the bike up. Once it hits that 80 degree mark, we'll get the power runs going, which you can see going now. The screen may take a little while because of the screen recording software we're using. And there you can see the power run. So now we're into setting up the tuning link software and getting ready to map the bike. What I'm doing here is setting up what method of mapping we're going to use, steady state or roll on, and also the parameters we're going to be mapping at. So the cruise area of the map, the main section, and also the power area. And again, the top left you can see the RPM, in the middle the throttle position, and on the right hand side you can see in the green there's an air fuel ratio that the bike currently runs at, and also below that is our target air fuel ratio. Down low in the RPM we use a steady state method of mapping, because in actual fact, when you're on the road, if you're at 40% throttle and 1500 RPM, it's pretty similar to what the bike's actually doing on the dyno now. You can see as the tuning link program makes the changes, the air fuel ratio that the bike's running at automatically adjusts with those changes. You'll also notice how the bike is running fairly rich at this position right now as we lean it out. And then you can hear the added power the bike gets as you lean that mixture out from running in that big zone. The RPM increase slightly as the fuel gets pulled out. We'd normally run this up to around 3.2 in the RPM in the steady state mode before we set off onto the roll-on mapping. And now once that's done, I've selected roll-on mapping, and now we'll roll on from 40% throttle and about 3000 RPM. Here the bike's being released under a load on the brake on the dyno to simulate real-world conditions on the road. Then once it's performed that run, it'll give me an air-fuel ratio that the bike was measured at. And then it will automatically run down that screen and fill in the numbers it needs, or that it thinks it needs, to get to that desired air-fuel ratio throughout that whole RPM. And then we'll retest it. What I'm doing here is just going through the numbers and making sure that they're a gradual progression. So if you have a look at a map and you see numbers jumping from minus to plus and then back to minus again, it's not really how the mapping works. It may be what the tuning link system or another person's version of what the bike needed at that point. But how a bike's going to work at its best is to have a gradual progression, like a rolling shape to the numbers. So what I'm doing there at the end of the runs is just scrolling down and making sure that the numbers run in succession and just smoothing them out. What we're doing here now is 60% throttle, and you can see across the top there the power commander lets you map at 2, 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 60, 80 and 100% throttle. What you'll notice also is the length of time at these throttle positions and RPM that it takes to get right. And this is why auto-tune isn't a good idea for writing fuel maps. Great if you want to use it for diagnostic purposes at a track or a race event, just to make sure you're in the ballpark, in your top end and the end of straights. But for actually writing fuel maps, and anywhere you're at part throttle, or anywhere you're at an RPM and throttle position for not a long period of time, the auto-tune isn't going to have enough time to make an assessment and change that fuel ratio correctly. See again, the bike's fairly rich down low. And once we get to the 3000, we'll do the same again. Roll on from 3000 RPM. See where we're at. Okay, so that's most of the mapping done. Now we're going to be doing 100% throttle. And while I'm here, one thing I didn't go over at the start of the video was just setting throttle position, which I'll run over just now. So there's the air-fuel ratio at 100% throttle currently. I'm just going to get out of the tuning link now and just go to the PCB software. And calibrate and throttle position. And this is where a lot of guys get mixed up in how to set this up. So what we're going to do is press reset at 0% throttle. And then once we get to 100% throttle, we'll press OK. Now this GSXR we're doing, the throttle position's jumping around a little bit, so it may not stick on the 100% throttle. We'll set up the tuning link again. Okay, so here's the next run at 100% throttle. You'll see the air fuel graph is a lot smoother than it was the first run. And I'll do a couple more runs just to flatten that out. But for now, let's just go to the part throttle position. And again, we'll do this steady state because your bike is actually held at these RPMs in cruising modes and low speed. This is really what gives you your rideability, you know, the nice smooth on-off throttle that you'll get after mapping. Like I said at the start of the video, we can also use other versions of mapping like the Bazzaz units. Now with those, we can map it either two ways depending on your setup. If you're running the basic Bazzaz software, it'll cost you a little bit more to map, purely because of the time taken to map them. Or if you're running the auto tune with Bazzaz, again, not advisable to write a map with it, but it will allow us to map the bike or the Bazzaz unit in a similar method as we're mapping here with Tuning Link, where we can just apply a load on the Dyno software to the bike and actually set up spot on throttle positions released under load, and we can just repeat that consistently until we get these flat air fuel curves. Pretty much impossible to do while you're riding around in the street.
You know I love it when you treat me rough. Don't stop, I like your job. So treat me rough. Treat me rough. You know when you do it, I just can't get enough.
Okay, so let's go and check the results. Back to the dyno run screen. Set up the starting point at 3000 RPM. We'll just change the run name. And here we go. The brake comes on, but it's started at the 3000 RPM set point we've set. Notice the air fuel ratio is pretty much spot on 13 all the way through. result of that run. We just go back to the initial runs to see the comparison. You can see there's a fair gain, especially through the middle range there. It's approximately 10, maybe a little bit more horsepower gain at about 8,000 RPM, and the torque significantly improved as well. And we're just flipping between different graph options we've got here. Runs measured in time, and then we'll also have a look at the fuel graph before and after. Just go to the air fuel curve. You can see the massive difference in the air fuel before and after there. A lot flatter and a lot closer to that 13:1 air fuel ratio that we're aiming for with the blue line. So that's it. Bike done.
On the run, says it's only having fun. Hey, go take a walk. Season's not some part of town.